Hi, I'm Dr. Jacqueline Cheung, a psychiatrist from Cebu City. I'm delighted to spend this time with you as we explore how we can foster joy by understanding the teen brain. In this segment, we will talk about how the teen brain is wired and how parents, teachers, and adults can help teens navigate the adolescent storm. We've all been teenagers before, or maybe we have teens who are listening in. Ever wonder what makes a teenager's brain different from a child's or adult's? Why are teens so strongly opinionated and emotionally driven? Are frustrations or mood swings just an exaggeration? Or is there something going on in the brain? Let's take a moment to appreciate and understand how a teen's thinking process develops. The brain is the last organ in our body to mature, taking until the mid to late 20s to fully develop. For teenagers, your brain is actually still undergoing many changes. Development starts in the womb, where both structures and connections are created. We are born with more brain cells than we need. Take note that the developing brain contains structures and cellular elements that are absent in the older brain. Connections, or synapses, are responsible for linking one area of the brain to another, allowing for communication across the whole brain. And these are just as important as the structures themselves. Development occurs from the back of the brain to the front. So, note the maroon and green areas at the back to the front or the blue area, and from the inside out. So, beneath the red area in the center going outward. The last part of the brain to develop is the frontal lobe, and this is the one in blue. This houses the prefrontal cortex, which is an important structure that is responsible for judgment, impulse control, emotional regulation, and empathy, or the capacity to put ourselves in another person's shoes. The prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until the mid 20s, which means teens cannot utilize their prefrontal cortex as well as adults could. Instead, they make use of their amygdala, located in the farther back part of the brain. Remember the development? From front to back, from inside out. Using the amygdala allows teens to decide based on emotions or gut reactions. And this might also explain why teens experience frequent mood swings, those quick emotional reactions without much rational thought. If you're a teen, is any of this familiar to you? If you're an adult, try to recall your vivacious teenage years. Have you come across a situation wherein you decided on things based on how you felt? How about mood swings? Did you get any of those? So these experiences are normal and part of teenage life. In adolescence, the synapses between the amygdala and frontal cortex have not been fully established, making it hard to work through emotions. Teens are highly sensitive to rewards and are driven towards novelty and social experience. They are more reactionary and impulsive, and this behavior may lead to more risk-taking. Impulsivity and risk-taking behavior is commonly seen and heightened during adolescent years. It's not just about raging hormones. All of this is because of the still developing prefrontal cortex. It's difficult for teens to make timely decisions, exercise appropriate judgment, delay gratification, and regulate their emotions. Additionally, the networks involved in emotion regulation and impulse control are not fully developed. So there is an imbalance, a lot of emotionality and impulsivity without the ability to regulate them. It is difficult being and raising a teenager because of this imbalance. And that's okay. It's normal. But if it's normal, then why is it such a big deal? Well, that's because at this stage, adolescents are vulnerable to being highly impressionable to both good things and bad. The teen brain is powered to learn. But learn what? On the good side, this would be a great time to develop hobbies, play instruments, do sports. Conversely, it would not be a good time to be exposed to drugs, alcohol, and other antisocial behavior. It is important to be intentional about what we learn. Why? Because a very important developmental process happens in the adolescent brain. Remember the extra neurons and synapses that our child brain created? Well, some of those have to be eliminated through a process called pruning. Pruning is the programmed elimination of neurons, synapses, and other brain structures. This happens as an important part of brain development, in that it functions to rid the nervous system of cells that have served their function. Those that are no longer used die, and those that are connected and functioning stay elaborate. This is sometimes referred to as the use it or lose it principle, and most pruning happens during the adolescent years. Take a look at this photo. The leftmost one shows the neurons of a newborn. They are few and sparse, and not too many connections have been developed. Over time, they increase in number. Take a look at the number of synapses in a 2-year-old. They are very dense. And then, compare it with the adults, where there are relatively fewer connections as an effect of pruning. So, whatever teens are learning and doing at this time becomes strengthened, and this could be something they could carry on into adulthood. It is important to be smart in making these decisions because adolescents are not exposed to as much life experiences as adults are. There is an important relationship between the environment, what our brains are exposed to, and what we do with them, and brain development. Because of teens' emotionality, impulsivity, and sense of omnipotence, they feel that they can take on the world. But, as discussed earlier, the brain cannot regulate itself well yet in this moment. That's why there needs to be a form of external regulation from parents, figures of authority, teenagers, counselors. That's why rules and regulations are in place, and that's why guidance and formation are still important even in the teenage years. Now, the next thing for us to figure out is how do teens know what to feed their brains during this critical time? Here are some points according to the psychological development of adolescents. Because, apart from the biological changes in our brain, there will also be changes that happen in our mind and in ourselves. Teenagers like to pursue their own stated goals of being independent, make decisions for themselves, exert assertiveness in their chosen fields. They are building their self-esteem, which influences their positive and negative risk-taking behaviors. They pursue alternative behaviors and styles, and then mold these experiences into a solid identity. They identify with a group of peers who become highly influential in their activities, styles, music, idols, etc. They establish a sense of belonging to certain groups and subcultures. Basically, they are exploring a greater definition of their self. And these are all part of the developmental tasks of teenagers. Now, how can we foster joy in this tumultuous and confusing time? In my practice, I apply something that's called the biopsychosocial approach. First, we have to fulfill our biological needs, which include good nutrition, like choosing fruits, vegetables, fish, lean meat, while avoiding junk food, alcohol, or too much caffeine. What we eat affects how we think, and if we feed ourselves junk food, we'd think like Cheung as well. Adequate sleep for 6 to 8 hours can enhance mental alertness and reduce irritability. Physical exercise like stretching, jogging, aerobics, yoga for at least 30 minutes a day, at least 3 times a week, can release natural endorphins and allow the body to withstand stress better. Now, I know that we're still in the pandemic and there's still ongoing stress around. How can I possibly revolutionize my life to fulfill my biological needs? Well, we don't have to do them all at once. Start with one small thing, like maybe eating an apple instead of apple pie, or putting your gadget away an hour before you go to sleep, or doing simple stretches on your bed right after you wake up. Little by little, these small changes will come together, and before you realize it, you've built a whole new routine. Next, we fulfill our psychological needs. Now, this can be a bit tricky because how do we find out what we need? To gain the sense of fulfillment, we'd have to get to know ourselves a little more, discover ourselves beneath the surface. I'd like to share this little exercise called the VIA Character Strength Survey. After this video, head on over to www.viacharacter.org. The VIA Character Strength Survey is a self-assessment tool that provides an in-depth analysis of your character strengths like kindness, leadership, creativity, curiosity, spirituality, and many others. After taking it, you will be provided with actionable tips to apply your strengths and to find greater well-being. For parents of teens, try to do this activity together to explore each other's gifts and strengths. Remember, even if something is listed on the lowest of the list, it is still a strength and can be utilized for your maximum potential. Say your top strength is leadership. Seek out groups which you can practice being a leader or start your own projects. If your top strength is curiosity, maybe find your niche. One of my top strengths is spirituality. Ever since I was little, I always believed that if you do your best, God will do the rest. And because of this belief, I've learned to devote my work to God, and I have received many blessings in return, including this opportunity to speak with you today. When I did my best in spite of the struggles of med school or adversities of training, God took me higher and exceeded the expectations I had set for myself. Lastly is the social aspect. This involves seeking and strengthening support from our family and friends, engaging in activities like exploring new hobbies or pursuing old ones, going outdoors to play sports, or staying inside to read a book. Recall your character strengths and see if there's an activity that you can do to play up any of that. Does being social equate to being on social media? What do you think? I'll leave that point for you to ponder on. As you can see, fostering joy is an active process. Contrary to popular belief, we don't just wait to feel joyful on a regular day. You might ask, but what if I don't have any motivation to do any of those things? Then ask yourself, what's something you can do? Like joy, motivation doesn't come to us naturally. In fact, it's something that we build. Completing one small task after another builds the motivation you need to complete bigger tasks. Now, I know that there are bad days. I know that there are frustrations from not being able to do what you want to do or be where you want to be. And I know that you can feel very negatively towards that. But you know what? It's okay. It's normal to have dips and downs. You are not less of a person if you don't feel joyful today. Feeling down doesn't take away any of your character strengths. Continue nurturing your body and your mind, and that will give you strength to soldier on. And you know what? If we are lost, there's one direction we can turn to where we may find at least a hint of what we're looking for. Do your best, and God will do the rest. This ends my short talk. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that I've enlightened you some way, or perhaps I've created a new synapse that is strong enough to survive pruning.